A week before the Day of the Dead, my son told me, "You should have left instead of Dad. At least he paid my bills." So I did exactly that. I canceled all the rent payments and left a note on the table saying, "I'm glad you're here. Follow my story to the end and comment with what city you're watching from. That way I can see how far my story has gone." My name is Fernanda Herrera, and I'm 63 years old. For the past 2 years, since my husband, Miguel, died, I've been supporting my son Diego and his wife Ursula like they're small children, who can't take care of themselves. I pay their $2,000 monthly rent, their electricity, water, internet, even their gas. I also buy them food, clothes for my 2 grandchildren, and any other treat they want. I don't do it because I have money to spare. I do it because I thought that's what a mother does when her children need help. Miguel always said that family supports each other, that you never abandon your own. But Miguel isn't here to see what his son and daughter-in-law have become. This morning, a week before the Day of the Dead, I was arranging marigolds for Miguel's altar when Diego arrived at my house with that familiar face, the face of someone who's come to ask for money again. Ursula followed behind him, carrying bags from an expensive store, her freshly manicured nails gleaming in the kitchen light. "Mom, we need to talk," Diego said without even greeting me. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't help me with the flowers. Nothing. He just sat down at the kitchen table as if it were his own home. "What's going on now?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. It was always the same. More money for this, more money for that. The kids need new uniforms for school, and Ursula needs to get her teeth fixed. It's about $2,500 in total. I stayed quiet, arranging the orange flowers in the vase. $2,500 more. So far this year, I've already given them over $20,000. My retired teacher's pension is $800 a month, and I have to use the savings Miguel and I put together during our 40 years of marriage to support them. "Diego, son, I already gave you money last week for rent and groceries." "I can't." "You can't?" he interrupted, raising his voice. "Can't you help your own family?" Ursula, who had been checking her phone, looked up with that fake smile she uses when she wants something. "Oh, mother-in-law, you know we'll pay you back. It's just that we're a little tight right now, a little tight. Diego hasn't worked full-time in 3 years. He always has excuses, that the job doesn't pay well, that the boss is an idiot, that he'd rather wait for something better. Ursula has never worked. She says her job is to take care of the children, but the children go to school for 8 hours a day, and she spends the time watching television or surfing the internet. Diego, your dad, and I worked together to save that money. It was for our old age, for medical emergencies. Mom, please!" Diego shouted, banging on the table. The flowers jumped in the vase. Then he said the same thing he always says. "Dad's dead, okay? He doesn't need it anymore. We're your family now." I felt like a knife had been plunged into my chest, but I took a deep breath and kept arranging the flowers. I wasn't going to cry in front of them again. Besides, Diego continued in that voice he uses when he's really angry, "If you weren't so obsessed with these Day of the Dead decorations and focused on the living, we wouldn't be having this conversation." "Diego." I tried to speak, but he was already pacing my kitchen like a caged animal. "You know what tires me, Mom? That you act like you're a saint. Like you don't live in this house Dad paid for. Like you don't benefit from everything he did for this family." Rage rose in my throat, but I still tried to stay calm. "Son, I worked too. I contributed to this house for 40 years too. Lies. Diego shouted, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Pure contempt. You never contributed anything real. Dad was the one who supported this family. He was the one who paid the important bills, the one who made the real decisions. Ursula laughed from her chair, a high-pitched, unpleasant sound. Oh, Diego, don't be so hard on your mom. But Diego wasn't finished. He came up to me, his face red with anger, and said the words that will be etched in my memory until the day I die. You should have left instead of Dad. At least he paid my bills without constantly nagging me. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Ursula stopped playing with her phone. I stood there with a marigold in my hand, feeling as if the world had stopped. My son, the baby I held in my arms for hours when he had a fever, the boy I taught to walk and read, the young man I supported when his father went on drinking binges for months at a time, that same son had just told me he wished I were dead. Get out of my house, I said in a low voice. What? You want to kick me out of my house now? Diego laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. Mom, don't be so dramatic. You know how I am when I'm angry. Just go, I repeated without looking at him. And don't come back unless it's for something other than asking me for money. They left. But before she walked out, Ursula approached me. Mother-in-law, Diego didn't mean that. You know that when he's angry, he knows exactly what he said. I cut her off. After they left, I sat in my kitchen with the flowers scattered all over the table. Miguel's altar was half finished, but I no longer had the strength to finish it. For the first time in 2 years, I cried for something other than my husband's death. I cried for the death of the image I had of my son. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about all the money I had spent on them, all the times they had treated me like a walking ATM. I thought about Miguel and how he always defended Diego, always found excuses for his behavior. But Miguel wasn't here to see what had happened. At dawn, I made a decision that would change our lives. Forever. The next morning I woke up with a clarity I hadn't had in years. As I made my coffee, I remembered something I had long blocked from my memory, the years when Miguel abandoned us. Diego was 8 years old when his father decided that being a husband and father was too boring for him. He left with a woman 20 years younger, leaving me alone with a child and no money. For 3 years we heard nothing from him, no calls, not a single dollar to help us. They were the 3 hardest years of my life, but also the ones that made me strongest. I worked as a teacher during the day, and at night I made tamales that I sold on the corner near the school. On weekends I cleaned offices. Diego came everywhere with me because I didn't have money for a babysitter. I remember the early mornings preparing masa for tamales with Diego asleep in a corner of the kitchen, wondering if things would ever get easier. I remember taking him with me to clean offices on Saturdays, telling him it was a game, that we were a secret cleaning crew. During those years, Diego and I were closer than ever. He helped me with the tamales, hugged me when I came home tired from work, and told me I was the best mom in the world. When he turned 10, he gave me a drawing of us holding hands under a giant sun. Next to it, he wrote, "To the bravest mom in the universe." I still have that drawing. When Miguel came back, repentant and crying, I forgave him because I thought Diego needed his dad. But things were never the same. Miguel became overprotective of Diego. As if he wanted to make up for the lost years. He gave him everything he asked for, never said no. He never made him work or be responsible. Let him be a child, Miguel would tell me when I tried to set limits for Diego. He already had enough responsibility when I was gone. But Diego wasn't a child anymore. He was a teenager, then a young adult, and he continued to expect everything to be handed to him without effort. Miguel paid for his mistakes, his debts, his whims. And when Miguel died, that responsibility fell on my shoulders as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Now, sitting in my kitchen remembering all of this, I realized something terrible. Miguel had turned our son into a parasite, and I had allowed him to continue being one. I picked up my phone and called the bank. I canceled the automatic transfer I made every month for Diego's rent. I canceled the additional credit card I had given them. I canceled everything. Then I sat down to write a letter. I didn't know if they would read it, but I needed to write it. I needed to make it clear that my decision wasn't out of anger, but out of dignity. Diego and Ursula, I wrote. For 2 years I have been your personal bank, receiving nothing in return but demands and mistreatment. Yesterday, you told me you'd rather I were dead than your father because he paid your bills without complaining. You're right about one thing, he did. But I'm not him, and I'm not going to do it anymore. Diego, when you were 8 years old and your father abandoned us, you told me I was the bravest mother in the world. I worked day and night to give you everything you needed. I carried you when you were sick. I helped you with your homework until late at night. I sold tamales on the street so you wouldn't lack anything. During those 3 years, we were a team. When your father returned, I forgave him for your sake. I thought you needed a father figure, but what you got was someone who taught you that the world owes you everything without you giving anything in return. Ursula, from the day you married my son, you've made it clear that you see me as a burden, who exists only to solve your financial problems. You've never shown respect for me, for my home, or for the sacrifice it takes to support you. From today onward, you're going to have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet, not because I don't love you, but because loving you can no longer mean destroying myself. If you ever want to have a real relationship with me based on mutual respect and not money, I'll be here. But I won't be your ATM anymore. With love and boundaries, your mother and mother-in-law, Fernanda. I folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and drove to their apartment. I saw them through the window. Diego was playing video games on the couch, Ursula was doing her nails at the kitchen table. My grandchildren were watching TV, eating cereal from the most expensive bowls I'd bought them last month. I slipped the letter under the door and left. The drive home was the most liberating of my life. For the first time in 2 years, my stomach wasn't in knots, wondering what new financial emergency would hit. For the first time in 2 years, my savings were going to stay put. When I got home, I finished Miguel's altar. I put out his favorite flowers, his picture smiling, a beer he liked, and a plate of mole he used to ask me for. As I arranged everything, I spoke to him as if he were there. Miguel, love, I know you always stood up for Diego. I know you wanted to protect him from the pain he felt when you left, but look at what he's become. Look how he treated me yesterday. You're not here to see what your protection did to him. But I am. I sat there for a long time looking at my husband's picture, remembering the good man he had been, but also the father who had spoiled our son so much that he'd become incapable of loving anyone but himself. That night I slept better than I had in months. I knew the next few days would be difficult, that Diego and Ursula weren't going to give up easily, but for the first time in a long time I felt I had control over my own life. I didn't know the war was just beginning. I didn't have to wait long to find out they'd read my letter. The phone started ringing at 6 a.m. the next day, just 3 hours after I'd slipped the envelope under their door. I didn't answer the first 5 calls, but when it kept ringing every 10 minutes, I finally picked up. "Are you crazy?" Diego yelled before I could even say hello. "How could you cancel everything without telling us? I warned you yesterday when you said you'd rather I were dead," I replied with a calmness that surprised even myself. "Mom, I wasn't serious. You know how I am when I'm angry." "Yes, Diego, I know exactly how you are. And that's why I made this decision." Ursula took the phone from Diego. Her voice was different, more desperate than I'd ever heard it. "Mother-in-law, please, you can't do this. The children are going to suffer. We have no way to pay the rent that's due tomorrow. You should have thought about that before treating me like your enemy instead of your family." "But you just don't understand," Ursula continued, and now she was crying. "Diego can't get a stable job, and I can't work because I have to take care of the children. The children go to school 8 hours a day, Ursula. And Diego can get any job while he looks for something better. Millions of people do." There was a long silence. Then I heard Diego shouting in the background. "Tell her that if she doesn't help us, we're going to lose the apartment. Tell her we're going to be on the street." "I already heard him," I told Ursula. "And my response is the same. You created this problem. You're going to solve it." I hung up the phone and unplugged it from the wall. For the next 3 days, they tried everything. Diego showed up at the library where I volunteered, throwing a fit in front of all the women I worked with. "My mother is leaving us homeless," he yelled at the poor women who were just trying to organize books. "She has money saved up, but she wants to see us suffer." The librarian, Dona Carmen, a 70-year-old woman who had been my friend for decades, glared at him with an expression that could have melted steel. "Young man," she said in that voice she uses to scold noisy children, "your mother has volunteered here for 10 years. She's never asked for anything for herself, always helping others. If she decided not to give you any more money, it must be for a very good reason." Diego turned red with embarrassment and left, but not before yelling at me, "This isn't going to end like this." The next day, Ursula showed up, this time with the children. She brought them straight to my house during dinner time, knowing that seeing them would weaken me. "Grandma, my 8-year-old grandson, Sebastian, told me, my mom says you're not going to help us anymore because you're mad at us." My heart broke. Sebastian and his little sister, 6-year-old Camila, were completely innocent, but I wasn't going to let Ursula use them as weapons. "Sebastian, love, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at your parents because they don't want to work to support you." Ursula glared at me with pure hatred. "You can't say those things to a child. And you can't bring them here to manipulate me emotionally." "I just want the children to have a home," Ursula said, but her act wasn't working anymore. "Then get a job and pay for it yourself." That night, after they left, I cried a lot, not for Diego or Ursula, but for my grandchildren. It pained me to know they would suffer the consequences of their irresponsible parents' decisions, but I also knew that if I kept rescuing them, Diego and Ursula would never learn, and my grandchildren would grow up seeing that adults don't have to work, that there's always someone else to solve their problems. On the 5th day after I canceled everything, my sister Rosa called me from Phoenix. "Fernanda, what's going on?" "Diego called me crying. He says you left him homeless." "Rosa, did Diego tell you what he said to me? Did he tell you he said he'd rather I were dead than Miguel?" Silence. "Did he tell you that for 2 years I've paid his rent, his utilities, his food, his gas, the kids, clothes, everything, while he spends his time playing video games and she gets her nails done?" "No, but Fernanda, they're family." "Rosa, I interrupted. When Miguel left us and Diego was little, did you help me? Another silence. Did any of you help me when I was working day and night to raise my son? That was different. No, Rosa, it wasn't different. It was me alone with a child, just like Diego is now with his children. The difference is that I didn't have anyone to ask for money every month. But you were stronger. No. I shouted, and I was surprised by my own voice. I wasn't stronger. I had no choice. And neither does Diego now. Rosa sighed. Okay, sister, but please think it through. The children aren't to blame. That's precisely why I'm doing this, Rosa, because children don't deserve to grow up with parents who think the world owes them everything. After hanging up with Rosa, I learned that Diego had started calling the entire family to turn them against me. Cousin after cousin, aunt after aunt, they all started calling me to tell me I was too harsh, that family helps each other, that Diego just needed more time to find his way. But none of them offered to help him. A week after I canceled everything, I saw the first real result of my decision. Diego got a job in a warehouse. It wasn't his dream job, but it paid $11 an hour and had set hours. I knew this, because Camila told me when I ran into her at the park near my house. Grandma, my dad is working at a big place with lots of boxes. He says he's really tired, but he has to work so they don't take our house. And your mom? My mom says she's going to look for a job too, but first she has to find someone to take care of me after school. For the first time in weeks, I felt a little bit of hope. Maybe, just maybe, my decision was working. But I knew the real test would come soon. Diego and Ursula weren't going to change overnight, and when they realized my decision was final, they were going to try something even more desperate. I didn't know just how desperate they could get. 3 weeks had passed since I cut off all financial support when Ursula showed up at my door, one Friday afternoon. She was alone, without the kids, and she had an expression I'd never seen on her before, genuine humility. Mother-in-law, may I come in? I need to talk to you. I let her in, although every instinct told me this was another manipulation. She looked different, thinner, less put together. Her nails, always perfect, were unpainted and short. Her hair, usually impeccable, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. She began, sitting on the edge of the sofa as if she weren't comfortable. And I think you're right. Diego and I have been very irresponsible. I sat across from her, waiting. After 7 years of knowing her, I knew that Ursula never admitted mistakes without an ulterior motive. Diego is working at the warehouse, she continued. And I got a part-time job at a daycare. It's only $8 an hour, but it's a start. I'm glad to hear that, I said, keeping my voice neutral. The problem is. She paused, as if it were difficult for her to say the next words. Sebastián got sick. He has a very nasty ear infection, and the doctor says he needs special antibiotics. They cost about $250. And our cheap insurance doesn't cover them. I felt my heart race. Sebastián was my weakness, and she knew it. I took Sebastián to 3 different clinics for a second opinion, Ursula continued, pulling papers from her bag. They all say the same thing. If he doesn't take these antibiotics, the infection can spread and he could lose his hearing. She showed me the prescriptions, the clinic reports, everything looked legitimate. The dates were recent, the stamps official, the doctor's signatures clearly visible. Mother-in-law, I know I have no right to ask you for anything after how we've treated you, but this isn't for us, it's for Sebastián. He's my baby. Our baby. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw real tears in her eyes. Not the usual theatrical drama, but the genuine fear of a desperate mother. "Where's Diego?" I asked. "Working. He's doing double shifts every day trying to scrape together the money, but it's going to be 2 more weeks, and Sebastian can't wait that long." I sat silently, looking at the medical papers, the doctor's handwriting, the technical diagnoses. Everything seemed real. And Ursula's face, for the first time in years, held no trace of its usual arrogance. "If I give you this money," I said slowly, "how do I know it's really for Sebastian?" "Come with me to the pharmacy," she said immediately. "We can go right now. You can pay the pharmacist directly. You can talk to him about the medicine. I won't touch a penny." That answer convinced me. The manipulative Ursula would never have given me so much control over the situation. "Okay," I said. "But let's go right now." We went to the pharmacy in my car. Ursula was quiet, nervous, but not with the demeanor of someone who was lying. When we arrived, she handed the prescriptions to the pharmacist, an older man who seemed to know her. "Oh yes, for the little boy with the ear infection," the pharmacist said. "These antibiotics are expensive, but very effective. Will you be able to get the full amount today?" "Yes," I said. "How much is it exactly?" $247, he replied. I paid with my card, watching the pharmacist prepare the medicine. Everything seemed legitimate. Ursula didn't ask for change. She didn't try to keep any extra money. Nothing. "Thank you, mother-in-law," she said as we left the pharmacy. "Really, thank you so much. I know I don't deserve your help, but Sebastian does." "How is he now?" I asked her. "Very bad. He's been crying all night from the pain. He can't go to school." "I want to see him," I said impulsively. Ursula hesitated for a second, but then nodded. Of course, of course." We went to her apartment. Diego wasn't there, as she had said, but when we walked in, I got the surprise of my life. Sebastian was there, yes, but he wasn't sick. He was playing video games on the couch, laughing with his sister. "Grandma!" he shouted when he saw me, jumping up from the couch to hug me. "Did you come to play with me?" I checked him immediately. He didn't have a fever, he wasn't complaining of pain, he didn't have any symptoms of an ear infection. He was perfectly fine. I turned to Ursula, who had frozen in the doorway. "Where's the infection, Ursula? Is it in the ear that doesn't hurt at all, or in the antibiotics we just bought 20 minutes ago?" Ursula went pale. "Sebastian," I said to my grandson, "does your ear hurt?" "Which ear, Grandma? Have I been sick?" "Your ear, love. The one that hurts." "No, Grandma. Mom told me that if anyone asked, I had to say my ear hurt, but I don't understand why." My world collapsed, not because of the money. $247 wasn't going to bankrupt me. It collapsed because Ursula had used my grandson to deceive me. She had made an 8-year-old boy an accomplice to a lie. "How could you?" I asked, feeling my voice crack. "Mother-in-law, I can explain. How could you use Sebastian for this?" "We needed the money," she whispered. "Diego doesn't earn enough, and I just started working." "So what was the money really for?" Ursula remained silent, but Camila, the 6-year-old, spoke from the sofa. "Mommy said the money was to pay the rent because the landlord is coming tomorrow, and if we don't pay, we'll be evicted." There was the truth. There was no infection, no medical emergency, just the rent they hadn't been able to pay and the desperation to invent a lie they knew would break me. Get out of here, I told Ursula. What? Get out of this house now. But mother-in-law, now. Ursula grabbed her keys and ran out, leaving me alone with the children. I sat on the sofa and hugged Sebastian. Poor boy, he had no idea what had happened. Grandma, why did you yell at my mom? He asked. Because your mother lied to me. My son. And lies hurt people. But she's coming back, right? Yes, she's coming back. But Grandma is going to have a very serious talk with her. I stayed with the children until Diego got home from work 2 hours later. When I told him what had happened, instead of apologizing or showing any shame, he got angry with me. It was just for the rent, Mom. It wasn't for drugs or anything fancy. Diego, she lied to me. You used Sebastian to lie to me. And what did you want us to do? You cut off our money overnight. At that moment I understood something that broke my heart. Diego didn't see anything wrong with what they had done. For him, lying to me and using his own son to manipulate me was normal, justified, even necessary. Give me back the medicine, I said. What? The medicine I bought for Sebastian. Give it back so I can return it to the pharmacy. Diego laughed bitterly. I already threw it away. You threw it away? I flushed it down the toilet. We couldn't take it back because then they'd realize the lie. At that moment, seeing my son standing there without a shred of remorse, I knew I had lost the boy forever, the one who had once told me I was the bravest mom in the world. But I also knew something else. I no longer cared about getting him back. The Day of the Dead arrived 3 days after the fake medicine incident. I had decided not to cancel my traditional plans. I was going to visit Miguel's grave like every year. I was going to bring him his favorite flowers and his beer. I was going to tell him everything that had happened since the previous year. But I didn't expect Diego to show up at the cemetery. It was 6 p.m., the sun was already setting, and I was alone with Miguel, arranging the yellow flowers on his grave. When I heard footsteps behind me, I turned around and saw Diego approaching, but something was terribly wrong. He was walking strangely, stumbling, and when he got closer, I could smell it. Alcohol. A lot of alcohol. There you are, he said, his voice thick. Visiting Dad Saint. Diego, you're drunk. Go home. Which home? He laughed bitterly. The house we're going to be kicked out of tomorrow, because my mom won't help me. He staggered and almost fell onto Miguel's grave. I grabbed his arm to steady him, but he jerked away. Don't touch me. You have no right to touch me after what you did to us. Diego, please, this isn't the place. This is exactly the place. He shouted, and his voice echoed throughout the cemetery. Some people who were visiting other graves turned to look at us. Here he is, the dad who actually loved me. The dad who actually paid for my things without making me feel like a criminal. I felt ashamed, not for myself, but for him, for the man he had become. Your dad loved you, I said, but he also spoiled you. And now you're drunk at his grave, disrespecting him. You're the one being disrespectful, he interrupted me, now shouting so loudly that people started to gather around. You're the one leaving us destitute. You're the one who prefers a dead man to your own living son. Diego, lower your voice. No. He staggered and kicked the vase with Miguel's flowers, scattering water and petals all over the grave. I'm not going to lower my voice. I want everyone to know what kind of mother you are. At that moment, something inside me broke. Seeing my son, the baby I had held in my arms, destroying his own father's grave, yelling at me in front of strangers, completely out of control from alcohol and rage, was more than I could bear. That's enough. I shouted in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. Get out of here right now. Diego laughed, but it was a horrible laugh, without joy. Or what? Are you going to cut off my money? He smirked. Oh, you already did. Then he did something I'll never forget. He approached Miguel's gravestone, leaned against it, and looked at me with eyes so full of hatred that it frightened me. Dad, he said to the tomb, your wife decided we're not family anymore. She decided her pretty flowers and altars are more important than your son. She decided it's better to spend money on the dead than on the living. Diego, please stop. You know what, Dad? He continued, completely ignoring me. She never loved you like I loved you. She never missed you like I miss you. And when she dies, no one will come to visit her like I come to visit you. Those words cut me deeper than anything he'd said before, because I knew there was a painful truth in them. When I died, after everything that had happened, Diego probably wouldn't come to my grave. And that realization hurt more than I expected. I'm done with you, he said, turning to leave. I hope you're very happy with your dead, because they're all you're going to have. But before he left, in one last act of cruelty, he kicked the new vase I had brought to replace the one he had already broken. The flowers scattered all over Miguel's grave again. He staggered away, leaving me there alone, kneeling among wet petals and broken glass, crying like I hadn't cried since Miguel's funeral. An older man who had been visiting a nearby grave came over to me. Are you all right, ma'am? He asked gently. Yes, thank you. It's just my son is going through a difficult time. The man helped me gather the flowers and clean up the glass. He didn't say anything about what he had seen, but his kindness reminded me that there were still good people in the world. After he left, I stayed alone with Miguel again. I spoke to him as if he could hear me. Miguel, our son is destroying himself, and he's destroying me too. I don't know if I did right or wrong by cutting off the money, but I can't do this anymore. I don't recognize the boy we raised. That night I went home completely shattered, not only because of what had happened at the cemetery, but because of the realization that I had lost Diego forever. The son I knew, the child, who had loved me, no longer existed. In his place there was a bitter man who blamed me for all his problems. But the nightmare wasn't over. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Herrera? This is Officer Martinez from the police department. Your son, Diego Herrera, is here at the station. My blood ran cold. What happened? We arrested him for disturbing the peace and damaging private property. He was heavily intoxicated and caused trouble at a restaurant. Can you come get him? Is he all right? Is he hurt? Physically he's fine, but he needs someone to come for him and pay the $500 bail. $500. Money again. It was always about money. Officer. What happens if no one comes for him? There was a brief silence. Well, he'd have to stay until his hearing. Probably 2 or 3 days. That's fine, I said quietly. I'm sorry, that's fine. He created this problem. He's going to be responsible for it. Ma'am, are you sure? He's your son. "Officer, my son told me today that he's done with me, that we're no longer family. So he can handle this on his own." I hung up the phone and turned it off. For the first time in my life, I let Diego face the consequences of his actions completely alone. There was no one to rescue him, no one to pay for his mistakes, no one to clean up his mess. And for the first time in months, that night, I slept deeply, without guilt, without anxiety, without fear that the phone would ring with another emergency. Diego was going to have to manage on his own, just like I had managed on my own when he was a child and his father had abandoned us. It was time for him to learn what it really meant to be responsible for his own life. 6 months passed after that terrible night in the cemetery. 6 months without a single call, asking for money. No drama at my door. No emotional blackmail. At first, the silence scared me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night wondering if Diego was okay, if the children had food, if I had done the right thing. But slowly, that silence turned into peace. I went back to the folkloric dance classes I had quit when Diego started needing so much of my money. I rejoined the reading group at the library. I started volunteering at the community center, helping other older women who had also been manipulated by their own children. I discovered I wasn't the only one. I became Fernanda again, not just Diego's mom or Ursula's mother-in-law. One April afternoon, I was watering the plants in my garden when I saw a familiar figure walking down my street. It was Diego, but not the furious, desperate Diego I had last seen. This Diego walked differently, slower, more thoughtful. He wore clean but worn work clothes, and in his hands he carried something I hadn't seen in years. Flowers. He stood at my gate for a long time before ringing the bell. When I opened the door, I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen since he was a child. Real shame. "Hi, Mom," he said. "Diego." Neither of us knew what to say. We just stood there, looking at each other, with years of pain and resentment floating between us. Can I come in?" he finally asked. I let him in. He sat on the edge of the sofa, nervous, turning the flowers in his hands. "These are for you," he said, offering them to me. They were white daisies, my favorite, the same kind he used to pick for me when he was little and got into trouble. "Thank you," I said, but I didn't move to take them just yet. "Mom, I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth, Diego. For the first time in years. Tell me the truth." He took a deep breath and ran his hands over his face. He looked thinner, more mature, more tired. His hands were no longer the smooth hands of someone who'd never really worked. They were rough, marked by labor. "The truth is that you're right about everything," he said. "Ursula and I treated you horribly. We used you. I disrespected you in ways that don't deserve forgiveness." He paused, staring at his hands. "When you left me in jail that night, at first I just got angrier. I thought it was more proof that you didn't love me anymore. But after 3 days in there, with no one to rescue me, I started to understand." "Understand what?" I asked softly. That for the first time in my life, I had to face the consequences of what I'd done. Without you, without Dad, without anyone to fix my mess. He stood up and walked to the window, looking outside. "Do you know what happened after I got out?" he asked. "No. Ursula left me. She went with another man, someone with money. She took the kids and disappeared for 2 months. I felt a stab of pain, not for Diego, but for Sebastián and Camila. During those 2 months," he continued, "I worked double shifts to pay lawyers and track her down. I slept on a coworker's couch. I ate once a day to save money. And for the first time, I understood what you went through when Dad left us. He turned back to me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I understood what it meant to be completely alone. Responsible for everything, with no one to lean on. I understood what it meant to work until your bones ache and still not have enough money for everything you need. And the kids? I asked. I got them back. Ursula got tired of her new boyfriend when she realized he wasn't going to give her easy money either. Now we live in a small apartment, but I can pay for it by myself. The kids go to a public school near my job, and I take care of them after classes. He showed me photos on his phone, Sebastian and Camila in a small kitchen helping him make sandwiches for lunch, the three of them cleaning their new apartment, Sebastian in a cheap but clean soccer uniform. And Ursula? I asked. She comes to see them sometimes on weekends, but we don't live together anymore. I realized she never really loved me. She just loved the idea of not having to work. He sat down again, but this time he looked less nervous. Mom, I didn't come here to ask you for money. I didn't come to ask you to forgive me, because I know I don't deserve it. I came to tell you that you were right about everything. About what, exactly? I asked. About the fact that I was a parasite. That I'd never learned to be responsible. That I was destroying you to keep my comfort. That I was a terrible example for my children. He paused for a long moment. And you were right about something else. Dad spoiled me so much that he made me incapable of valuing the people who truly loved me. He moved closer and knelt in front of my chair, like he did when he was a child and had broken something. Mom, you worked 2 jobs to raise me when Dad left. You sold tamales in the street so I could have new shoes for school. You took me with you to clean offices on weekends because you had no one to leave me with. And when Dad came back, you protected me from his bad temper. You defended me when he came home drunk. You comforted me when he yelled at me. Now he was crying openly. And I, like an idiot, thought none of that mattered compared to the money he gave me. I thought love meant easy money. Not real sacrifice. Diego. I whispered. Let me finish, please, he begged. When I told you I'd rather Dad be alive instead of you, I didn't just disrespect you, I disrespected myself. Because you raised me to be better than that. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect us to go back to how things were, but I needed you to know that I finally understand. I understand that real love can't be bought, it has to be earned. And I haven't earned yours in years. I stayed silent for a long time, looking at this man who had been my baby, my little boy, my greatest joy and my greatest pain. How do I know this isn't just another manipulation? Diego? I asked. He smiled, a sad, tired smile. You don't. And I don't blame you for not believing me. But I can tell you this, I've spent 6 months working, paying my own bills, raising my kids alone. 6 months without asking anyone for a single cent. And I didn't come here because I needed anything. I came because my kids keep asking about their grandmother. And because His voice broke. Because I miss my mom. What do you want from me, Diego? I asked quietly. A chance, he said. Not to go back to how we were, that was toxic for both of us. A chance to build something new. Something real. Something based on mutual respect, not money. I got up and went to the kitchen to find a vase for the daisies. Diego followed me. If you're going to be in my life again, I said as I arranged the flowers, it's going to be on my terms. Whatever you say, he replied. First rule, never ask me for money again. If you have a real emergency, we can talk, but I will never be your personal bank again. Understood? Understood, he said. Second rule, you treat your children with the respect and discipline I tried to teach you. No, spoiling them like your father spoiled you. Agreed? Agreed. Third rule, if you ever disrespect me again like you did at the cemetery, it's over. Forever. There will be no second chances after that. Diego nodded, serious. And the last rule. I added. You're going to have to earn my trust again, with actions, not words. It's going to take time. All the time you need, Mom, he said. I finished arranging the flowers and set them on the kitchen table. They were simple, honest, beautiful. Can I get to know this new version of my son? I asked. Diego smiled, and for the first time in years, I saw in that smile the little boy he once was. I'd love for you to meet him, he said. It wasn't a movie ending. We didn't embrace while violins played. I didn't forget everything he'd done. But it was a beginning, a real beginning, built on truth instead of manipulation. 2 years later, Diego kept his word. He never asked me for money. He got a better job in construction and moved to a bigger apartment for himself and the kids. Sebastian and Camila visit me every Sunday. I take them to the park, teach them how to cook, and tell them stories about when their dad was little. Ursula eventually disappeared from their lives completely. But the children are okay. They have structure, boundaries, and a father who finally learned that love is shown through presence and responsibility, not through easy money. And I have something I hadn't had in years, a life of my own. A life where I'm not afraid of the phone ringing. Where my money is mine. Where I can plan my future without wondering what new crisis I'll have to solve. I learned that sometimes the hardest kind of love is the kind that saves both people. I learned that saying no can be the greatest gift you give someone you love. And I learned that it's never too late to get your dignity back. On the Day of the Dead this year, Diego came with me to the cemetery. We brought fresh flowers for Miguel, and for the first time in years, I was able to speak to my husband with peace in my heart. Miguel, I said, our son has finally become the man we hoped he'd be. God.